If you had asked me, hey, who's going to be the MVP of the scrimmage last Saturday, I would have said a lot of people. I never would have said James Burnham, but here we are.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. A bit of an embarrassing delay between my soliloquy and the intro music, but that's okay. I tried to click the button, and I tried to click it again. And I'm as bad with clicking that button as I am the mute button. But, Jimmy, we've talked a lot about the scrimmage from Saturday. We've talked, the quarterbacks ad nauseum. We've talked running backs, offensive line, receivers, some problems mixed in all there, some high points. And we're not trying to be negative Nellies here. I just think that's the nature of the Alabama fandom, right? That for the most part, we downplay a lot of stuff because we're scared we're not going to be perfect. I think that's very fair. Isn't that true?
We're not going to be perfect. It is a lot of pressure is not the right word, especially for fans, but the standard is so high. The standard is so high, and it's very frustrating for me. I'm not saying that last year was fine, that everything was great and people shouldn't bitch or people shouldn't be upset. What I don't like, though, is Alabama finished fifth, one spot out of the playoff, one spot out, and the reaction was like they finished 55th or 105th. And that is it's insulting to the players on the team that actually had good seasons and played hard and played well. And you've got to play well to finish fifth in the whole country. And frankly, as I said all the time, we're really top four. They should have been. We were one of the best four teams last year. I think the playoff and Alabama's postseason game against Kansas State proved that. But yeah, that's the frustrating part of the negativity for me is it's not the reaction, it's the overreaction. This is a disaster. I literally saw the word disaster all the time. And those people should be forced to watch the 2000 season this year. Instead of watching this year's team, watch the 2000 season. That's a disaster.
I think they should have to watch the 2000 season while walking down the Montgomery River Walk. That's what I think they should have to do. No, but Jimmy, it's so funny because it's all about perspective, right? I'm driving into work. One of the national shows is talking about how, man, Tennessee coming off that 11-2 season, they looking good. I was like, yeah, that sounds a lot like us, and everybody's thinking the dynasty's dead. I mean, it's all about perspective. Everybody's like, here comes, Hugh Freeze, this master recruiter. Look how much he's kicking butt. There's several spots behind Alabama, and we're like, what's wrong with our recruiting? It is just the way we are wired, especially after 15, 16 years of Nick Saban. But now, having said all that, I also want to say, and you can spin this very negatively if you'd like to.
I might.
But Jimmy, you won't. You're Captain Sunshine, and you know it.
Well, yeah, I try to be factual. That's what I say all that. I try to be factual and not just seeing the glass half full. Facts and truth.
Again, you can spin this any way you'd like. The one constant positive that came out of the scrimmage Saturday was people's effusive praise for James Burnham, who was booting punts like he's never been booted before. He's like Brooks and Dunn, boot scooting boogie, just kicking them out of he was just killing it. And apparently kicked one from the end zone to the other 28-yard line if we had said to our, his 28-yard line, would be like, yeah, that sounds about right. He kicked it to the other 28. And that's pretty awesome. So
he's really developed. And it's strange for a punter, but that's what happened.
And Will Reichert.
He had never punted. In a college. I don't think. I wish the media had asked him this. We had a great media appearance the other day, and the media did ask him some fun questions. But I wish they'd asked him how many American football games had you seen in person before you punted in one? That's how new he was to American football in his first year, and that first year wasn't great. He was not a good punter. I'm supposed to be the sunshine guy, right? He stunk. He was not good in 2021 at all. That was pretty bad. That's true. But here's the thing: I think they knew going in that they were going to have to live with some pretty average to bad punting that first year, and then it was going to pay off. It started to pay off last year while people barely noticed, and thankfully Alabama didn't punt a ton, but while people barely noticed, he improved last year. James Burnip was a pretty average punter. I think he averaged right at 42 yards a punt. It was 41 and change, but right at 42 yards a punt. That's fine. He went from bad to fine. I got excited about, if he makes the same jump this year, going from fine to the next step is really good. It's not J.K. Scott. I'm not promising that. I'm just saying he went from bad to fine. The next equal step up from fine is really good. And that's what, by all accounts, happened Saturday and had been happening throughout fall camp, by the way. Alabama now has, Luke, I believe, a really good punter. Now, he's going to still have some misses and shanks. Number one, just about every punter does. And number two, he's still new. This is year 3 for him, not, hey, I've been punting in Alabama since I was 6 years old because my dad was a punter and he taught me how to punt when I was 6, and I was my high school starting punter in the 9th grade. That's not at all what happened here. This is actually an Australian rules football player who was introduced into punting because there's literally talent scouts in Australia. We could do a whole show on this, Luke, because it's super interesting, but there's American football talent scouts in Australia looking for punters, and they scour the rugby and Australian rules football fields, and they find guys that look like, hey, you're the right age, and are you interested in American football punting? Have you seen that? Do you think you could do that? And they scout the guys based on their abilities in other sports, and Burnip is exactly one of those guys, and somehow got in contact with Alabama, but boy, it's really paying off now. I think he's got another year of eligibility after this. Luke, if he improves this much this year and then improves again, we may have a near J.K. Scott level punter on the team in 2024. But this year, Luke, when we do punt, and hopefully we won't see him too much, but when we do, I think we got a good football player, and living with the results in 2021 have paid off in 2023.
And, we could have also spent a whole segment on Will Reichert.
Yeah.
But there's really no need to. I mean, everybody knows it. I think he went something like 5 or 5, 6 of 6 in the scrimmage, according to some folks. Kicked a 55-yarder. Yeah. We know he's awesome.
55 yards. Yeah, somebody said 55 yards. That's a monster.
Jimmy, now I want to talk about a new sponsor that means a lot to me. This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. And if you've ever watched this show, if you've been watching it for a long time, I've dealt with depression in the past. So, it's something that means a lot to me. I know that getting the help you need is a very, very positive thing. And there are times you just feel uncertain about where you're going in life, or what the right path is or was, or how you're going to get through it. Sometimes in life, we're just faced with tough choices, and the path forward isn't always very, very clear. Things can be very muddled, and you just need to talk it through with somebody. Whether you're dealing with decisions around career or relationships or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the better it gets. I promise you. Look, nobody ever thought that I would ever go to therapy at any time in my life. And I've done it mostly on, but sort of off and on for the last 10, 11 years. And it has changed a lot of things for me in a very positive direction. I'm very, very happy with most of my experiences there, and benefited a ton. And I wish, honestly, that BetterHelp had been around back then, because it sounds like it's just incredible. And if you're out there struggling with anything, I'm talking about job, work, family, friends, whatever, just anything that's bothering you inside, this is a great outlet for you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. That is huge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Again, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So we truly do appreciate their coming on board. This is a big deal. And if you need that help, there's nothing at all to be embarrassed about. Everybody's dealing with stuff, y'all. So as the week goes on, we're going to get ready for high school football coming up this week. Jimmy, we won't talk about it right now, but I know this weekend you got AHSA really getting kicked off, what they call week 0. I always hate that name, but it's week 0. I'm going to be calling the Thompson-Opelika game. Really excited about that. Get to see Trent Seaborn, get to see Malik Autry, who's at Opelika, get to see the Fagans kid at Anquan Fagans, who's committed to USC, but who knows? He may flip to Alabama eventually. Who knows?
Visited Alabama recently.
Yeah.
Came to Alabama for the cookout, I think.
Right. So that's something to watch. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, Thompson, 4-time defending state champ, going for 5 in a row, which hadn't happened since Hazelwood back in the 80s, I think. Auburn.
Those good teams.
Yeah.
Kerry Good, Pierre Good, Antonio Langham.
Chris Good.
But
Auburn and Hoover play this weekend. They're at Mountain Brook Vestavia. A lot of good games. Saraland is taking on Lipscomb. Lipscomb has Deuce Knight and some 2 other kids that are committed to Tennessee. Saraland, of course, has KJ Lacey committed to Texas, and Ryan Williams committed to Bama. That game's going to be on ESPN. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to have that game on while I'm calling the other game. I hope I don't screw it up. But yeah, so all that's going on. So yeah, we'll be talking about that the rest of the week. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about now, Jimmy, is potential depth chart. Now, we can start at quarterback. I think we've really beaten that horse to death for now. So let's leave it alone. And even though it is, look, I'm going to tell you the truth. People love talking about the quarterback. I mean, let's all assume right now, though, it's going to be Jalen Milroe. And so I feel like that's what it's going to be. So let's leave it right there for now. Then you talk about running back, right? We can get to running back. You can talk about Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, Jam Miller, Justice Haynes. Okay, that's probably the order, the pecking order. But it wouldn't shock me, Jimmy, if at the end of the year, Jam Miller or Justice Haynes is in that number 1 spot.
I think I would just look at snap share and number of touches, and I'm sort of settled on this, Luke, and this answer might just bore people. Like, hey, that doesn't sound like the best way to do it. And maybe don't take it too literal, but almost feel like, hey, if there's going to be right around 28, let's say there's going to be 28 touches or 28 handoffs in the game. If there's 28, I sort of feel like there'll be 7 to Jay, 7 to Roydell, 7 to Jam, and 7 to Justin. My kids. I mean, I really think it's going to look a lot like that. And I feel bad for Jason and Roydell because they sort of have earned more, and we would do fine if they had more. But Jam and Justice are just so talented. I think they won't be able to help themselves, but try to force feed them the ball. I think, Luke, this is simply a situation where there's just too many good backs and one ball. And it's hard to imagine the running back getting more than 28 touches in a game at Alabama because the quarterback's going to run the ball quite a bit too. So when you factor that in, it's just hard to make the math work. Clint Lamb, by the way, has an excellent story on this exact same topic this morning on BOL. Everybody needs to check that out. Clint even shared what he predicted a year ago, and he about nailed it. I mean, it's shocking how good Clint predicted how many touches and catches Gibbs and McClellan and the guys would have a year ago. And he's predicted it again. We're a little different in our predictions, not much, but Clint nailed it a year ago. I tend to think right around 28 carries a game for the running back position. I think I'm going with my best guess is it's going to be equal between the 4 players. Now, it might start the season out with a little more Jace Roydell and Justice and Jam get more touches as the season goes on. But by season's end, when you total it all up, Luke, I think they're going to be just about equal between the 4.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that may be the best room on this team. I think that may be the best position room on this team. I mean, I guess
It is.
defensive backs in the discussion too, but I really feel like running back may be the best.
I think outside linebacker is pretty good too.
That's true. That's true too. So any of those three you could sell me on for sure. Now we get to we're going to probably just bypass offensive line today too, because we talked about that a little bit the other day. But I want to get to receiver because I'm looking at this. And again, this is all from Bama 24/7. But wide receiver, Ja'Cory Brooks or Malik Benson at the Z. X is Burton, and then probably Kendrick Law. H, Isaiah Bond, then Prentice or Emmanuel Henderson. A few things that jump out to me here. I don't see a superstar, but I see a lot of promise. This may be the most promising room. Promising may be the wrong word. This is my most hopeful room. I'm hopeful that there's promise. I mean, we have not seen anybody bust out outside of Ja'Cory Brooks having Ja'Cory Brooks had a lot of touchdowns last year. We talked about that, but Ja'Cory Brooks having the big catch against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, of course, scored against Kansas State, scored the big touchdown against LSU. I mean, he's had his moments, right? But consistency's been an issue. Jermaine Burton, we all know about Jermaine Burton. I mean, he's been solid, not spectacular. Isaiah Bond's got speed for days, but it hadn't been all put together just yet. I think he caught a touchdown pass in the Kansas State game. Kobe Prentice has had a really good first of the year last year and then sort of tailed off. Emmanuel Henderson looks like a gazillion bucks, but we just don't know what he can do yet. Kendrick Law, people seem to love him, and he had a good scrimmage Saturday. But again, you got to temper it with what has he actually done on the field. So I guess this is the room I'm most hopeful about because I see the potential, but it's got to come to fruition for me to really buy in.
Yeah. A couple things. First, I'm optimistic about the wide receiver room. Optimistic, and so I guess another word for that is hopeful because I still think you can't be certain because it was a question mark last year. There's been a lot of drops in the spring and camp and the scrimmages, all true. So it's fair to have doubts about this position, but I remain very optimistic, and that's why when I'll go over the top six, you'll see why. But one little rant here about how that website did its depth chart sort of drives me nuts a little bit. And this is why, when they want to break it down to X, Y, and Z, and this kid's he's the number one in the slot, and he's number one at X, and here's the flanker, here's number one at flanker. It's this guy. I'm not saying those aren't positions. Of course they are. Of course, Alabama tells kids, okay, you're in at Z, you're in at X. Of course, it's football. Those are football positions. But I think when you're breaking it down for fans in the depth chart, it's confusing. And this is why they all play multiple spots. They do. They're cross-trained at all of them. Prentice last year as a true freshman only lined up in the slot. But now he's in year two. He knows all the positions. Kobe Prentice is going to line up sometimes outside. Jermaine Burton is sometimes going to line up in the slot. Benson could be outside. He might be in the slot. He's an older kid. So that's why I don't like it. It makes it sound like that's the only position they play. And they don't. They play all the positions. That's why I like to break it down in terms of a term I use, a snap share. Really what I'm saying is how much do they play? How much are they on the field? I like having a wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and count how many snaps they play. Because when you just say Kobe Prentice is the number one slot, well, okay, I just looked and he's lined up outside. So now you just confused me. Why is he? I thought you said he was a slot guy. Well, they line up in multiple positions because Alabama always does. That's why they do that at every position. Mike, Will, Jack, Sam, safety, corner. Alabama plays left, right, corner, but anyway. Okay, wide receiver. To me, the number one wide receiver early in the season will be Jermaine Burton or Ja'Cory Brooks because they led the team last year in receptions and targets, and they both return, and they're a year older and a year better. I suspect they will, at least early in the season, lead that group. So to me, Burton's 1, Brooks is 2, or vice versa. Then I think based on how far he's come quickly, I would call Malik Benson the number 3 guy. And that's simply because he hasn't been there as long as all the others, yet he's a starter. He's clearly in the first team. That's a heck of a thing to say because we weren't saying that about freshmen a year ago. Some of them did become early season starters and play, but none of them have been as splashy as Malik Benson has. So I would call Benson 3. Then starting 4, I would look at all the sophomores, the guys that played last year as freshmen who are back. Isaiah Bonds clearly made a big move. I put him at 4. I put Kendrick Law at 5. Some people think he should be higher than that. Nick Saban is said to love Kendrick Law. Nick Saban even referred to him as K-Law earlier this season when asked about him. And Nick hardly ever calls any player by their nickname. And it stood out to me like, wow, coach must really like Kendrick Law. He called him K-Law. So Kendrick at 5. I would put Kobe Prentice at 6. And this is what's exciting, Luke. After all my ranting and raving and about something that didn't really matter, here's why everyone should be excited. I have Kobe Prentice at 6, and last year I think he caught 33 passes. That's good. I mean, this guy caught 33 balls a year ago. Now I'm calling him wide receiver 6. That, to me, tells me, Luke, that the wide receiver room has really improved. It's better. We should be excited. Even the 6th guy's a bit of a playmaker. He caught, didn't he? He made a big play against Kansas State, the bowl game, last game we played. So I'm excited about this group because if Prentice is the 6th guy, they're good and they have depth. And I didn't even count Emmanuel Henderson, who's probably the 7th guy. And man, I would like to see the team that's got a 7th receiver as gifted as Emmanuel Henderson. Now, he hasn't made an impact yet, but we're going to see him make a play or two this season.
Jimmy, now I need to tell everybody about FanDuel. I mean, I don't need to. I want to because I love FanDuel. Look, football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win big all season long because right now you can bet on a Super Bowl winner, and you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. So just, bet on Cincinnati or bet on, who else? Miami. Bet on Tua. And every time they win a game, you win money. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads or player props, over-unders, and more. Whatever they got at FanDuel, you can use it. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go there, see everything they've got to offer you. It is so much fun. FanDuel.com/lockedon. You'll love it. Go check it out. All right, Jimmy, we're going to do one last position group very quickly here to wrap up the show. And this is the one that scares me the most after reading the depth chart, and that's a defensive line.
Really?
I'm worried. I'm worried. I know that some people – look, just when I read these out, and again, put them in whatever order you want because some people said Tim Keenan started on Saturday. But Justin Aboigbe, Jamarian Latham, Jaheim Otis, Tim Keenan, Tim Smith, Damon Payne. Now, what you don't see in there, of course, is James Smith. I guess Keon Keeley would fit in that somewhere, right?
Well, he's playing outside linebacker.
Okay.
He's an outside linebacker for now.
Okay.
He could grow into that position, but he's with the linebacker.
Okay. But when I read off that grouping of 6 and then throw James Smith in there for number 7, and if you can think of somebody I'm missing, throw him in there. But Jaheim Otis, I love Jaheim Otis. We have, I think he's awesome. I think he's going to be great. Tim Smith is good, but again, we've talked about him on your countdown. He hadn't put it all together for very long. Damon Payne, we loved him coming out of high school. We just hadn't seen a ton. Tim Keenan, he could be very solid, but do I feel like he's going to be an all SEC player? I just don't. I'm not trying to be negative. I want him to be. Please be Tim Keenan. But I thought that he would be, when we signed him even, I thought he'd be a very good backup defensive lineman with a chance to play in the pros eventually. That's what I thought. Now it seems like we're counting on him a little bit more. Justin Aboigbe is coming off that injury. And while everything points to, hey, he's fully healthy, it's a little scary. And then Jamarian Latham. He's played some. He's had some moments again. But tell me the all-star out of that group. Jaheim Otis, okay, I will buy that one. Who's the all-star other than him?
Yeah, I would say probably Aboigbe, but I'm not predicting Justin Aboigbe will be all SEC this season. I do think he's a good player. I agree with Luke that of the position groups on defense, this is the one to worry about. It's the one I would rank last. when I compare it to the other position groups on defense. And that's a little worrisome because the position is so important. But, and this is a big but, I like all 6 of those guys. To me, all 6 are contributors. And I also think over the course of the season, here comes James Smith. Here's another name from a guy here who's having a really good camp from the inside, Monkel Goodwine. I think here comes Smith, here comes Goodwine. And if they can bust into that top 6, now we really got something, because the front 6, to me, the top 6 guys are pretty good. If you're moving guys out because you're upgrading, now we really got something. So I do think for the position to really come through for Alabama and be as good as we want it to be, then players like James Smith and Monkel Goodwine need to bust through. But Otis is a first-round pick to me. I think he'll be one of the better defensive linemen in the SEC. I think Boydby is an NFL player. I don't think he's a day 1 or a day 2 pick, but I think he's a day 3 NFL football player. I think Tim Smith is a day 3 player, and I know that he's been talked about a lot because apparently he was benched. Nick Saban called him out for not being consistent enough. I get all that. But like I pointed out last night on the BOL board, and this to me is big, and just shows how we over-criticize at times. Ask an Alabama fan that knows the league pretty well and say, who's a better defensive lineman, Tim Smith at Alabama or Nazir Stackhouse at Georgia? I think Alabama fans are going to tell you Stackhouse is the better player. And I think if you went to Georgia fans who know their program and know the SEC pretty well and say, who's a better player, Nazir Stackhouse or Tim Smith? They're going to say, oh, it's Stackhouse. Who the hell is Tim Smith? They don't even know who he is. Okay. And I'm not disputing that. I'm just going to say this. They've been in the league the same amount of times, the same years. They're in the same class. Tim Smith has 59 tackles, 5 sacks, and 7 tackles for loss. Stackhouse has like 48 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. Tim Smith outproduced this kid in his 3 years at Alabama, playing the same position, being the same size. Tim Smith's been a more productive player, and we get on Tim for not being consistent, and yet we point to other guys around the league as being better players. I think it's because we expect so much and we want so much, we criticize. But in fact, if you look at what he's actually done on the field, it's better than what people believe. So I think Tim Smith's a pretty good player, and I think we're trying to motivate him to go from pretty good to great because he's capable of being great, and he's not great. He's just good. Well, Tim, it's time to be great. This is year 4, man. So I think he's got NFL ability. I think Payne and Latham are good subs. Latham particularly is one of our better interior pass rushers. And it is good news that Tim Keenan, the guy we didn't have a lot of expectations for, is apparently pushing to get the starting lineup. That's very encouraging. So I think this group is solid, but it needs to be better. And that's true. It needs to be better. I'm pulling for James Smith and Monkel Goodwine being the guys that make it better.
All right, that's going to do it for today's pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. Look, last time I looked, I'll look right now just because I'm that kind of guy. We are at 5,995 subscribers. We are 5 away from 6,000. And when we get to 6,000, I'm going to come on here and do like I do on my phone and play the celebration song by Kool and the Gang. That's what I want to do. So if you are interested in hearing a snippet of Kool and the Gang's celebration, then you will sign up and subscribe to this program. That's
you didn't mute the whole show. You didn't mute the whole show. That should be a celebration song too.
I should do that every time afterwards. That is so true. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. Thank you so much. And we will be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide. It's game week.